So you're considering moving to Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, just outside of Charleston, but first you'd like to understand the good and the bad and the pros and the cons. Well, today that's exactly what we're talking about, so stick around. We're going to dive into that right now. If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in Charleston, South Carolina, and all the surrounding areas, then please click the subscribe button below and tap the bell for notifications so that you can be the first one to know about all things Charleston. Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a local realtor here, and this is my cat, Kiwi. Apparently, she decided to join us today for the video. Well, Kiwi and I get calls every day from people just like you looking to make the smooth move to Charleston. So whether you are moving in 9 days or 90 days, then please feel free to give me a call or a text or an email, and I would love to help you make your smooth move to Charleston. Now, I already have a video on the channel all about the pros and the cons of Charleston overall. It goes very in depth about a lot of topics like weather and the cost of living and so many other aspects, so you can check that out. I'll link to it below. But in this video, I specifically want to talk about Mount Pleasant, which is just over the Cooper River from downtown Charleston. I want to get more granular in this video about Mount Pleasant specifically because every suburb is going to have its pros and its cons. So this is me being honest with you about what I think is the best and the worst of Mount Pleasant. I actually lived in Mount Pleasant for 5 years and I personally loved it. My siblings both live in Mount Pleasant as well as my parents, so I know it pretty darn well. And my sister and I love it so much that we actually call it Mount Perfect. So I do have some bias because I do love it. I think this video is going to help you decide if you would love it too, or if maybe there's a better fit for you somewhere else in the Charleston area. We do have a ton of diverse areas here, so if it's not Mount Pleasant, then there's going to be somewhere else that I'm pretty sure you are certain to love. The first pro of Mount Pleasant is that it is very centrally located, and overall there's a lot of positive aspects about its location. As I mentioned earlier, it's very close to downtown Charleston. It's as close as 10 to 15 minutes if you are in the southern part of Mount Pleasant. So of course a lot of people love that because if you want to be in a lot of the nightlife and the restaurants and the history, you are super close. And you're also very close to the beaches. Isle of Palms and Sullivan's Island are two of our most popular beach spots here. And again, it's going to vary depending on where you live, but you are very close to the beaches from Mount Pleasant, closer than a lot of other areas that you might be looking at in Charleston. If you are close to the Isle of Palms connector or to Coleman Boulevard, then you're probably only 10 minutes away from the beach. If you're in North Mount Pleasant, you are going to be a bit further, but all in all, Mount Pleasant is known for being close to the beaches, so a lot of people who move to South Carolina and to Charleston, of course, move here for the coastal life and because they love the beach. So if that's you and that's important, then location is definitely something to keep in mind. Even if you're not super close to the beaches, Mount Pleasant in general has a ton of water. There's the Wando River, the Cooper River, lots of small creeks, lots of man-made lakes and neighborhoods. So even if you're maybe on the 30-minute end of the spectrum to the beaches, there's a strong likelihood that you are much closer to that, to some body of water, and that you can still enjoy the beautiful views and water life. That's something that a lot of people in Mount Pleasant enjoy, is the easy access to things like a kayak launch pad or a boat landing. So they're all over Mount Pleasant, and you don't have to go to the beaches to find those types of things. Mount Pleasant is super easy to navigate. There are two main roads that go through Mount Pleasant. Route 17, which takes you from downtown over the Ravenel Bridge all the way through Mount Pleasant. That's really the biggest, busiest road. And then Coleman Boulevard is another good-sized road. It has this kind of small town, quaint feel, which I love about it. When you come over the bridge, it forks, and one road is Route 17 and one road is Coleman. Coleman will take you to Sullivan's Island, and 17 will take you pretty much everywhere else. We also have 526 that ends in Mount Pleasant, so you can pick that up and take that up to Daniel Island, the airport, North Mount Pleasant, and it loops all the way around to West Ashley. It's a semicircle, so if you need to get to other parts of town, it's actually super easy. It connects with 26, so you could go 526 to 26 and be really anywhere that you need to be. It's about 25 minutes from the airport. From Mount Pleasant, again, just kind of depends on what part, but that's a pretty good average. So even if you need to get to the major roads, it's actually still very convenient. There is a small airport in Mount Pleasant. It's not for big commercial liners though, so I've personally never even been there, and most people haven't and probably never will. But if you have a private plane, for example, then that's something you can look into. Everything you need is in Mount Pleasant, again, which is why people love it, is for the convenience. We have hospitals, doctors' offices, tons of grocery stores, and a lot of people's favorite places like Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, and Costco. The second pro about Mount Pleasant is what I'm going to call its level of civic engagement and community orientation. So I'm just thinking of this category as all the things a town does to make itself even better and to really show that the town cares about its people. And Mount Pleasant certainly has that feel to it. Mount Pleasant has highly ranked schools. 100% of the schools have achieved an excellent rating from the South Carolina Department of Education year over year. The town is always trying to push initiatives like adding more green spaces and parks. They maintain the landscaping beautifully. Even just driving down Route 17, you'll notice beautiful trees and flowers in the median between the north and south directions. Mount Pleasant is known as a great place for small businesses. And in 2023, as well as some years in the past, Mount Pleasant has won the Top 10 All-American City Award given by the National Civic League. This award is given to communities that demonstrate an ability to address serious challenges with innovative grassroots strategies that promote civic engagement and cooperation between the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. So what this means is any town that is actively trying to improve the health and wellness of its residents, solving problems that the town is facing, and really welcoming the youth in their efforts are candidates for this award. This year, Mount Pleasant was one of the winners due to the town's new intellectual disability inclusion movement, which educates businesses with information about how to expand their business offerings to be more inclusive, and its police department's strong relationship with the community. Mount Pleasant does have very low crime rates, and among other factors. The third pro about Mount Pleasant is the sheer abundance and variety of things to do. I already mentioned outdoor activities earlier, so if you want to kayak, paddleboard, golf, or fish, you will definitely be in the right place in Mount Pleasant. There's also a lot of retail, both big name brands as well as local boutique shops and small businesses. One of the most popular places to shop is called the Mount Pleasant Town Center. Here we have big stores like Belk, Ulta, Lululemon, Old Navy, and many others, as well as local shops. There's also a movie theater here and lots of big chain restaurants as well as local restaurants. Speaking of restaurants, I'm a foodie and I love the restaurant scene in Mount Pleasant. I think it rivals downtown as far as just how delicious and well-renowned some of these restaurants are. Page's Okra Grill, for example, has won many awards over the years for best breakfast, best lunch, and best fried food. Some of my personal favorites are Vicious Biscuit for breakfast or lunch. They also have an incredible gluten-free biscuit if you are gluten-free like me and you need some delicious southern gluten-free options. For pizza, I love Coastal Crust. Their pizza is wood-fired and it is so good. Again, they also have gluten-free as well as some great salads and a very cozy outdoor setting. I also love this tiny little place called Tierra El Mar for Latin food. They have just really great appetizers and fresh seafood and tacos, and of course, great margaritas. And if you're looking for a place for fine dining or special occasions, check out Langdon's or Opal. Now that's just a few of my favorites. I can't mention all of them in this video, but that's a good start. If you like the nightlife, there is some nightlife in Mount Pleasant. Your best bet would be to go to Shem Creek. There's a bunch of bars and restaurants there, and they stay open pretty late. They also have a lot of live music and different events that they do throughout the year. If local breweries are your thing, then we've got 4 of them in Mount Pleasant. We have Hobcob Brewing, Ghost Monkey, Two Blokes, and Westbrook. I'm also a coffee lover, and Mount Pleasant has no shortage of local coffee shops that are all incredible. Check out Meadow, they've got a drive-through, which is super convenient. I also love Vintage Cafe and Tidal Grounds up in North Mount Pleasant, as well as many others. Owl Bear in Seaside Farms, right off the IOP connector, is a great bet if you are in that part of Mount Pleasant. We just have too many great coffee shops to name. If you're a history buff, we've also got lots to do as far as history. There's the USS Yorktown, which is at Patriots Point, and that's a huge tourist attraction, as well as Boone Hall Plantation. Now, Boone Hall does tons of fun events throughout the year. There's a strawberry festival in the spring, there's a pumpkin patch and Fright Nights in the fall around Halloween, and many other events throughout the year. And in general, Mount Pleasant just does a ton of cultural events throughout the year. There are 2 weeks that are restaurant week, one in the winter and one usually in the fall, I believe, that local restaurants participate and they do these pre-fixed course meals. And so it's a good opportunity to go try somewhere new and try their discounted pre-fixed course menus. There's a Christmas light parade every year. There's a Blessing of the Fleet festival every year as well, which is the big seafood festival in the spring. There's a Low Country Oyster Festival. The Cooper River Bridge Run, the first weekend of April every year, which is one of the biggest races in the entire country. We easily get 40,000 people or more every single year that run this race. So that's a huge event, and so many more fun things to do throughout the year. Moving on to our cons now. The first con is the high cost of living. Mount Pleasant is one of the most expensive areas to live in the entire Charleston area. The property values are high, the rents are high, and the sales tax is high. The sales tax is 9%, which is the highest out of our 3 counties here. And overall, Mount Pleasant's cost of living is 28.7% higher than the national average. Right now, in June 2023, the cost of the median home in Mount Pleasant is $730,000, and a lot of subsections within the area, like Old Town Mount Pleasant, or some of the neighborhoods up in North Mount Pleasant, like in Dunes West or Carolina Park, they have some of the highest price per square foot properties in the entire MLS here in Charleston. So this does make Charleston not affordable for a lot of people. There are plenty of people who would love to live here, but unfortunately they just can't afford to. Now, that being said, there is a good amount of variety in Mount Pleasant. So while we do have the enormous multi-million-dollar homes on the water, we also have tons of condos and apartments. So if you don't need a lot of space and location is important to you, then maybe this is something that could work for you. The price of entry right now for Mount Pleasant is about $310,000 to $350,000 for a 1-bed, 1-bath condo or townhouse. Maybe a 2-bed, 2-bath. You'll be looking at about 750 to 1,000 square feet. So if you think that fit the bill for you, then you can still buy in Mount Pleasant and get to have this great location. But if that's your same budget and you are looking for a single family home, you're just not going to find that in Mount Pleasant. Our single family homes here start about $550,000 and up. The second con of Mount Pleasant is that it has gotten very crowded over the years and the traffic has gotten a lot worse. So tons of people have moved here, especially in the last few years during the pandemic. And because there are really only a few main roads, Route 17 being one of them, it does get pretty congested, especially at rush hour. Route 41 is another area off of Route 17 that brings you up to a lot of big neighborhoods like Carolina Park, Dunes West, Park West, Rivertown, and others. And if you live off of Route 41, it's only a 1-lane road, so it can get backed up. Generally speaking, most of the land has been built out in Mount Pleasant. There's not big forests like there used to be. You have to go further north into the Francis Marion National Forest in places like Allendale and Hugie to really find those vast acres and acres of forest. Really, the builders in Mount Pleasant have just taken every morsel of land, and you'll feel this impact, especially if you're looking at lot sizes. A lot of the homes are very close together and the yards are small because they are trying to maximize the number of homes per the available land. So if you're looking for large lots, there's definitely some neighborhoods, especially some of the older ones in Mount Pleasant, that have this. But if you're looking at new construction, it's very likely that you're going to have a small lot. But some people really like that because maybe they don't want the maintenance of a whole acre of land, for example. So that's just going to be a big personal preference. The third con of Mount Pleasant is the impact of tourism. So this is not a knock on tourists because they are very important in our economy. They bring in a lot of revenue throughout the year. But if you live somewhere full time, then sometimes it can be frustrating as a local if you are wanting to go out to your favorite spot on a Friday night and there's a 90-minute wait and you just feel like you can never get into the places that you want to go. There are a lot of tourists in the Charleston area, and while yes, a lot of them stay downtown or in other parts of Charleston, a lot of them also stay in Mount Pleasant because it is such a nice place and they are closer to the beach, so some people really prefer that. There's a ton of hotels in Mount Pleasant. When you're driving around, you're going to see a lot of out-of-state plates, so it's just something to be aware of. There's also lots of weddings here, so people will come in just for a couple of nights over the weekend. Boone Hall and Alhambra Hall in the Old Village are very desirable hotspots for weddings. Now, they do limit the number of Airbnbs in Mount Pleasant. They are very on top of that and very strict about the Airbnb, VRBO, short-term rental policies in Mount Pleasant. So, first of all, a lot of neighborhoods don't even allow, according to their HOA rules, for these types of properties to be in their neighborhoods. But outside of that, if they are allowed, then the town restricts the number of permits and they have to meet a bunch of rules. So overall, while you can find some of these homes in Mount Pleasant for short-term rentals, there's really not a huge amount of them. So that does help keep some tourist numbers down, or if you are concerned about that as far as buying a house you don't want to live next to a property that is changing over every couple of nights, then while we can't guarantee that that wouldn't happen, it's very unlikely, especially depending on what neighborhood you choose and the rules that that neighborhood has about short-term rentals. Well, that wraps it up. Those are our 3 pros and 3 cons about Mount Pleasant. If you are a local and you live in Mount Pleasant or somewhere else in Charleston, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment below if you have anything to add to either the pros or the cons list here. Really appreciate your input. And if you don't live here yet, but you'd like to, then please reach out to me, schedule a Zoom consultation, or just shoot me a text, an email, or a phone call. And I really look forward to meeting you, and I hope we get to work together. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.